It all began with an idea. The idea of a tax to soak the rich. That idea quickly took root among the public and liberals of both major parties, and ultimately brought us the 16th Amendment. In the spirit of soak the rich, Democrats introduced several bills to provide a higher tax on higher incomes. However, the conservative branch of the Republican Party made sure the bills never passed the Senate. Democrats used the Republicans' non-support of the bills to their benefit as evidence that the Republicans were the party of the rich and should be thrown out of power. This put pressure on William Taft, who was president at the time, and though he was against the income tax, he acknowledged it as all right in principle in political speeches. In April 1909, Senator Joseph Bailey, a conservative Southern Democrat who was actually opposed to the income tax, became the culprit of its creation. In an attempt to further embarrass the Republicans, he created another income tax bill which was similar to those which had been introduced in the past. This would force Republicans to openly oppose another income tax bill and further label Republicans as party of the rich. Expecting the usual opposition, Bailey introduced his bill. However, to his dismay, Teddy Roosevelt and many liberals in the Republican Party came out in favor of the bill. In fear that the bill might actually pass, Senator Nelson W. Aldrich of Rhode Island, the Republican floor leader, frantically met with Senator Henry Cabot Lodge of Massachusetts and President Taft to work out a strategy to demolish the Bailey tax bill. Their strategy was to admit that they were in favor of an income tax, but only if it was an amendment to the Constitution. They knew it may get approval of the House and Senate, but were quite certain that it could be defeated in conservative states, 3/4 of which were required in order to ratify the amendment. On June 16, 1909, the Democrats were caught completely off guard by President Taft's message recommending a constitutional amendment to legalize federal income tax legislation. This threw liberals into an uproar, and Congress whole saw exactly what was happening and took to the floor to expose the scheme of the Republican leaders. But his concern wasn't necessary, as both politicians and the states were enamored with the idea of soak the rich. The Senate approved the 16th Amendment 77-0, and the House approved by a vote of 318-14. When Congressman S.E. Payne of New York, who had actually introduced the amendment to the House, saw that it might actually be ratified, he was horrified. He quickly went to the floor and denounced the bill he had sponsored, saying, "As to the general policy of an income tax, I am utterly opposed to it. I believe with Gladstone that it tends to make a nation of liars. I believe it is the most easily concealed of any tax that can be laid, the most difficult of enforcement, and the hardest to collect. That it is, in a word, a tax upon the income of honest men and an exemption to a greater or less extent of the income of rascals. And so I am opposed to any income tax whatever in time of peace. I hope that if the Constitution is amended in this way, the time will not come when the American people will ever want to enact an income tax except in time of war." So, the political strategy of the Republican leadership had backfired, and state after state ratified the Soak the Rich Amendment until it went into effect on February 12, 1913.